Freddie Mercury was in the middle of Bohemian Rhapsody when a woman in the third row started screaming something that made 72,000 people fall into deathly silence. What happened next would change not just that day, July 13, 1985 at Wembley Stadium, but the very way the world would see one of rock's greatest legends. At 6:41 p.m., exactly 21 minutes before Queen took the Live Aid stage, Sarah Mitchell, a 32-year-old nurse from Royal Hospital for Children in London, was kneeling in the stadium's women's bathroom. Her hands trembled as she clutched a small, worn blue teddy bear. The bear belonged to her daughter, Emily Mitchell, 8 years old, who at that very moment lay in a hospital bed just 14 kilometers away. What none of the 72,000 people filling Wembley Stadium knew was that Emily had been given 48 hours to live. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia, stage 4. The doctors at Royal Hospital had told Sarah 3 days earlier, on July 10th, that there was nothing more they could do. Emily's small body had stopped responding to treatment. Her tiny frame, which had once run through their garden in Islington chasing butterflies, now barely had the strength to lift her head from the pillow. Sarah had been saving for 18 months to buy these tickets. 2 tickets. Section C, row 3, seats 47 and 48. She'd bought them the day they went on sale, January 15, 1984. Emily had been healthy then, vibrant, her blonde hair catching sunlight as she danced around their tiny flat singing, "We Will Rock You" at the top of her lungs. The concert was supposed to be Emily's 9th birthday present. The date was perfect, July 13, 1985, just 2 weeks after her birthday. But leukemia doesn't care about birthday presents. Sarah had left the hospital at 5:15 p.m. that afternoon. She'd kissed Emily's forehead, whispered, "I love you," and walked out of room 307 knowing she might never see her daughter alive again. Dr. James Richardson, the lead oncologist, had pulled her aside in the hallway. "Go," he'd said, his voice breaking. "Emily made me promise to tell you to go. She said you've been talking about this concert for 2 years. She wants you to be happy." Those were almost Emily's exact words, delivered in a whisper so faint Dr. Richardson had to lean within inches of her face to hear them. "Tell Mommy to go see Freddie. Tell her to be happy." So Sarah went. She walked through the gates of Wembley Stadium clutching Emily's teddy bear, the one they'd named Freddie Bear after Mercury himself. The bear had been Emily's constant companion through every hospital stay, every chemotherapy session, every midnight when the pain got so bad she couldn't sleep. The bear still smelled like the lavender lotion Sarah rubbed on Emily's hands. The stadium was electric, 72,000 people from across the United Kingdom and beyond, all there for the biggest concert in history. The Live Aid benefit to fight famine in Ethiopia. Sarah barely registered any of it. She sat in her seat, Emily's empty seat beside her, and stared at the stage. Status Quo opened the concert at 12:00 noon. The Style Council, the Boomtown Rats, Adam Ant, Ultravox, Spandau Ballet, Elvis Costello, Sting. The hours blurred together. Sarah sat motionless, Freddie Bear pressed against her chest, tears streaming down her face in the summer heat. Then, at 6:41 p.m., a roar erupted that shook the stadium foundations. Queen was taking the stage. Freddie Mercury strutted out wearing a white tank top and blue jeans, his presence commanding every single eye in Wembley Stadium. Brian May's guitar, Roger Taylor's drums, John Deacon's bass. The opening notes of Bohemian Rhapsody crashed over the crowd like a tidal wave. Sarah stood. She didn't know why. Her legs just moved. The crowd sang every word. 72,000 voices united in one of rock's most iconic songs. Freddie commanded them like a conductor with an orchestra, his voice soaring over the massive speakers, his movements pure theatrical brilliance. He was in his element, untouchable, divine. Then came the piano section. The quiet, haunting middle part where Freddie sat at the grand piano, his fingers dancing across the keys. The crowd had quieted, swaying, lighters held high, the summer evening sky darkening to twilight. That's when Sarah broke. She didn't plan it, didn't think about it. One moment she was standing there, and the next she was screaming at the top of her lungs. "Freddie, please! For Emily!" Her voice cut through the music like a knife. Section C, row 3, was close enough to the stage that her desperate scream reached the front. Close enough that Freddie Mercury, his hands still on the piano keys, looked up, confused, searching the crowd. The music didn't stop, but something shifted. Brian May glanced at Freddie. Roger Taylor's drumming faltered for just a beat. The 72-year-old people around Sarah turned to look at her. "Freddie!" Sarah screamed again, holding Freddie Bear high above her head, tears streaming down her face. "My daughter is dying! She has 48 hours! Please! She just wants to hear you sing!" The stadium fell silent. Not completely. The band played on, but something had changed in the energy. You could feel it ripple through the crowd like electricity. Confusion turned to realization. Realization turned to collective heartbreak. Freddie stood from the piano. He walked to the edge of the stage, his hand shielding his eyes from the stage lights as he peered into the crowd. Security guards were already moving toward Sarah's section. The protocol was clear. Remove disruptions immediately. But Freddie raised his hand. A single gesture. Stop. The music stopped. All of it. Brian May's guitar, Roger's drums, John's bass. 72-0 people stood in absolute silence. Freddie's voice came through the microphone, soft but clear. "Where is she? The woman who called out. Where are you?" Sarah's voice had left her. She stood there shaking, holding Freddie Bear, unable to speak. The people around her started pointing, creating a path, making space. "Row 3, someone shouted. "Section C." Freddie looked directly at Sarah. Even from the stage, even with the lights in the distance, their eyes met. "What's your daughter's name?" Freddie asked, his voice gentle now, all traces of the showman gone. Just a man talking to a mother. "Emily," Sarah managed to choke out. "Emily Mitchell. She's 8 years old. She's at Royal Hospital. She has 48 hours. She just wanted to hear you sing." The silence that followed was profound. 72 Zeran people holding their breath as one. Freddie turned back to look at his bandmates. Brian May nodded. Roger Taylor was wiping his eyes with his wrist. John Deacon just looked at Freddie and mouthed one word. "Go!" Freddie turned back to the microphone. "I need security to bring her backstage. Right now." The crowd erupted. Not in cheers, in something deeper. A collective sound of emotion so raw it seemed to come from the earth itself. 2 security guards reached Sarah within 30 seconds. They were gentle, their own eyes wet. One of them, a man named David Chen, 41 years old, had lost his own son to cancer 3 years earlier. He took Sarah's hand and squeezed it. "Come on, love. Freddie wants to see you." The walk backstage took 90 seconds. It felt like 90 years. Sarah clutched Freddie Bear so tightly her knuckles went white. The stadium was still silent behind her. Waiting. Everyone waiting. Backstage, in the narrow area just off stage right, Freddie Mercury was pacing. His manager, Jim Beach, was trying to talk to him, reminding him they only had a 20-minute set, that Bob Geldof had been militant about timing, that every band got exactly their allotted slot, and no more. Freddie wasn't listening. When Sarah came around the corner, Freddie stopped pacing. He looked at her. Really looked at her. At her tear-stained face. At her trembling hands. At the worn blue teddy bear she held like a lifeline. "You're Emily's mum," he said. Not a question. A statement. Sarah nodded, unable to speak. Freddie walked toward her. Slowly. carefully, like approaching something fragile and precious. When he reached her, he did something no one expected. He knelt. This giant of rock and roll, this legend who had commanded stages around the world, knelt on the concrete floor in front of a devastated mother. "Tell me about Emily," he said softly. And Sarah did. The words poured out of her like water from a broken dam. How Emily loved "We Will Rock You." How she would stomp and clap even when she was too weak to stand. How she'd made Sarah promise to bring Freddie Bear to the concert. How Emily had whispered that she wanted her mommy to be happy, even though Emily herself would never get to be happy again. Freddie listened to every word. His eyes never left Sarah's face. When she finished, he reached out and gently took Freddie Bear from her hands. "May I?" he asked. Sarah nodded. Freddie stood, still holding the bear. He turned to Jim Beach. "Call Royal Hospital for Children. Get Dr. Richardson. Tell him I'm bringing this bear back to Emily tonight, and I'm singing to her myself." Jim Beach's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Freddie, we're in the middle of Live Aid. We have David Bowie after us. You can't just—" "I can, and I will," Freddie said, his voice sharp now, final. "This little girl has 48 hours to live. She doesn't have time for logistics." He turned back to Sarah. "Is Royal Hospital the one on St. Ormond Street?" Sarah shook her head. "No, it's the new children's wing at Royal London Hospital. Whitechapel." Freddie nodded. "I know it. 14 kilometers from here. 30 minutes if we push it." He looked at his bandmates, who had followed him backstage. "I'm going to finish our set. Then I'm taking Sarah to see Emily. Tonight. Not tomorrow. Tonight." Brian May stepped forward. "We're all going, Freddie. All of us." What happened next would become one of the most legendary performances in rock history. Queen returned to the stage. Freddie still held Freddie Bear in his hand. He walked to the microphone, the blue teddy bear visible to every person in Wembley Stadium. "This," he said, holding the bear high, "belongs to a little girl named Emily Mitchell. She's 8 years old, and she's in a hospital 14 kilometers from here, fighting for her life. She can't be here tonight, but she's watching. Emily, this entire performance is for you, darling." Then Queen played. "Radio Gaga," "Hammer to Fall," "Crazy Little Thing Called Love," "We Will Rock You," "We Are the Champions." 20 minutes, that would be called the greatest live performance of all time. But it wasn't just the music. It was Freddie, holding that blue teddy bear for the entire set, singing to Emily, to Sarah, to every person who had ever lost someone they loved. When "We Are the Champions" finished, Freddie didn't bow. He didn't wave. He ran off stage, grabbed Sarah's hand, and said 2 words. "Let's go." A car was already waiting, not a limousine. A regular car, driven by one of the Live Aid production assistants, a woman named Patricia Moore, who had volunteered the moment she heard what was happening. Sarah sat in the back seat with Freddie. Brian, Roger, and John followed in a second car. The drive through London should have taken 45 minutes in normal traffic. Patricia Moore made it in 22 minutes, running every yellow light, her hazards flashing. They arrived at Royal London Hospital at 7:47 p.m. Dr. Richardson was waiting at the entrance to the children's wing. His eyes were red. "She's fading," he said quietly to Sarah. "She's been asking for you." "She's not alone anymore," Freddie said, stepping forward. "Where is she?" "Room 307, 3rd floor. They took the stairs because the elevator felt too slow." Sarah led the way, Freddie right behind her, still clutching Freddie Bear. The door to room 307 was partially open. Sarah pushed it wider and stepped inside. Emily lay in the bed, so small she barely made a shape under the white hospital blanket. Her blonde hair, what was left of it after months of chemotherapy, spread across the pillow like dandelion fluff. Her eyes were closed. An oxygen line ran under her nose. Monitors beeped steadily, tracking a heartbeat that was growing weaker by the hour. "Emily," Sarah whispered, kneeling beside the bed and taking her daughter's tiny hand. "Baby, I'm here, and I brought someone to see you." Emily's eyes fluttered open. So blue, so tired. "Mommy? I'm here, sweetheart." Emily's gaze drifted past Sarah, landed on the figure standing in the doorway. Her eyes widened, just slightly, just enough. "Freddie?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Freddie Mercury walked into the room. He sat down on the edge of Emily's bed, careful not to jostle her. He held up Freddie bare. "Your mum took very good care of this little guy," Freddie said gently. "But I think he missed you. May I give him back?" Emily nodded. Freddie placed the bear in her arms. She hugged it weakly. "Did you sing tonight?" Emily asked, each word an effort. "I did. I sang for you, darling. The whole thing. Every note. 72 Ono people sang with me, and every single one of them was singing for you." A tear rolled down Emily's cheek. "I wanted to be there. I know, sweetheart. But here's the thing." Freddie leaned closer, his voice soft and warm. "You were there. You were there in every note. You were there in your mum's heart. You were there in Freddie Bear. And now I'm here, and I'm going to sing for you again. Just for you. Would you like that?" Emily's smile was faint but real. "Yes, please." Freddie looked at Sarah. She nodded, tears streaming freely now. And there, in room 307 of Royal London Hospital, at 8:03 p.m. on July 13, 1985, Freddie Mercury sang. No microphone, no stage, no lights. Just his voice, pure and perfect, filling that small hospital room with magic. He sang, "We Are the Champions." Slowly, tenderly, like a lullaby. Emily's eyes stayed open the entire time, locked on Freddie's face. Sarah held her daughter's hand. When Freddie reached the final chorus, something extraordinary happened. Emily sang with him. Just the last line. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it was there. "We are the champions." When the song ended, Freddie didn't move. He sat there, his hand resting gently on Emily's arm. Brian, Roger, and John had entered the room during the song, standing quietly against the wall. Dr. Richardson stood in the doorway, not even trying to hide his tears. "Emily," Freddie said after a long moment, "I want to make you a promise. Can I do that?" Emily nodded weakly. "I promise that every time I sing 'We Are the Champions,' I'm going to think of you. Your strength, your courage, the way you smiled just now, even though I know it's hard. You're a champion, Emily Mitchell, the greatest champion I've ever met." Emily's eyes closed. For a terrifying moment, Sarah thought she'd lost her. But then Emily squeezed her mother's hand. "Thank you, Freddie," she whispered. "Thank you for making Mommy happy." Freddie's voice broke. "Thank you for reminding me what matters, darling." Queen stayed for another hour. They sang quietly together, told stories, made Emily laugh twice, something Sarah thought she'd never hear again. At 9:15 p.m., Dr. Richardson gently suggested that Emily needed rest. Freddie stood slowly. He leaned down and kissed Emily's forehead. "You keep fighting, champion," he whispered. "You keep fighting." In the hallway outside room 307, Freddie Mercury, the untouchable legend of rock, leaned against the wall and wept. Brian put a hand on his shoulder. Roger and John stood silent. Sarah emerged from the room and walked to Freddie. "She'll be gone soon," Sarah said quietly. "Maybe tonight. Maybe tomorrow. But you gave her something I never could. You gave her magic." Freddie looked at her, his face wet with tears. "She gave me more," he said. "She reminded me why we do this, why music matters. It's not about the stadiums. It's not about the crowds. It's about this. It's about Emily." They exchanged phone numbers. Freddie made Sarah promise to call him no matter what happened, no matter what time. The call came 38 hours later. July 15, 1985, at 2:47 a.m. Freddie answered on the first ring. "She's gone," Sarah said. Freddie didn't speak, just listened as Sarah cried. When she finally calmed enough to talk, she told him something that would stay with Freddie for the rest of his life. She held on longer than anyone expected. Dr. Richardson said it was impossible. She should have died that night, but she didn't. She lived 2 more days. And you know what she told me? Right before the end? She said, "Mommy, I'm ready now." Freddie made everything okay. But here's the part that no one saw coming. The part that would change everything. 3 months later, on October 18, 1985, Freddie Mercury and the surviving members of Queen announced the establishment of the Emily Mitchell Foundation for Pediatric Cancer Research. They donated 100% of their Live Aid performance royalties, every penny from the recording that would be played millions of times, every cent from the documentary footage. All of it went to the foundation. Freddie became obsessed. He visited children's hospitals quarterly, always quietly, always without press. He'd show up with his acoustic guitar and sing for kids who were dying, for parents who were breaking. He never publicized it, never sought credit. Brian May would later say, "That night changed Freddie. He was always generous, always kind, but after Emily, something shifted in him. He stopped caring about the fame, started caring about the kids." The Emily Mitchell Foundation funded breakthrough research in pediatric leukemia treatment. By 1990, 5 years after Emily's death, the survival rate for children with acute lymphoblastic leukemia had improved by 17% directly because of research the foundation funded. That percentage represented 1,247 children. 1,247 kids who lived when they should have died. Sarah Mitchell never remarried. She became the foundation's executive director in 1987 and held that position until her death in 2019 at age 66. In her office, she kept 3 things: a photograph of Emily, Freddie Bear, now preserved in a glass case, and a handwritten note from Freddie Mercury that said simply, "Emily was the champion. Always." When Freddie Mercury died on November 24, 1991, Sarah was one of the few non-family members allowed at his private funeral. She brought Freddie Bear with her and placed it in Freddie's casket. The funeral director tried to stop her, but Jim Beach intervened. "Let her," he said quietly. "Freddie would have wanted it that way." Today, the Emily Mitchell Foundation has raised over $847 million for pediatric cancer research. The original Royal London Hospital room where Freddie sang to Emily has a small plaque that reads, "In this room, July 13, 1985, Freddie Mercury reminded us that love is stronger than death, and music is more powerful than fear. In memory of Emily Mitchell, champion." Every year on July 13th, Queen's surviving members gather at that plaque. They bring flowers. They don't sing. They just stand there, remembering the night that a dying 8-year-old girl reminded them why music matters. The final verse of "We Are the Champions" took on new meaning after that night. Every time it's played, every time those lyrics echo through stadiums around the world, they carry Emily Mitchell's voice. That tiny whisper, that incredible strength. We are the champions. Because in the end, that's what Emily was. That's what every child fighting for their life is. Champions. Every single one. And Freddie Mercury, the legend who commanded stages and captivated millions, learned that lesson from an 8-year-old girl clutching a blue teddy bear. The greatest performance Freddie Mercury ever gave wasn't in front of 72,000 people at Wembley Stadium. It was in a quiet hospital room for an audience of 1. That's where the true magic lived. That's where love conquered death, even if just for a moment. That's where a superstar became human, and a dying child became eternal. If you ever find yourself at a Queen concert, real or recorded, listen closely to "We Are the Champions." Listen for that moment when the crowd sings along. Somewhere in those voices, if you listen with your heart instead of your ears, you can still hear Emily Mitchell, 8 years old, brave beyond measure, singing her heart out one last time. She was, is, and always will be the champion.